support of, let's say, the EFF and maybe a huge number of minority parties. And I cannot see the Freedom Front Plus within that framework. Even the Patriotic Alliance is problematic in some way. So it's going to be difficult. And the crucial factor here is the MK party. If you look at the MK party and their support base, you cannot get a majority easily without the support of both the DA and the MK party. So in other words, if the MK and the DA is outside of the process, it is difficult to achieve an absolute majority.
Even with the IFP coming on board in whichever coalition you have, they still won't get the majority.
The IFP can, in a way, assist them to get, I haven't done the mathematics precisely, but they will come very close with the IFP. But now you must take into consideration that the IFP is, in terms of their own base, they are functioning in competition with the ANC in many ways. There's a long history of conflict. There's currently a lot of conflict involving the kingdom of KZN and so on. So it's not going to be that easy just bringing them in. And if you bring them in, you must give them positions. And I cannot see the EFF entering this without Malema trying to gain a position of at least, say, a deputy president. So it's not going to be that easy.
Very, very interesting. Now, in terms of this 2% proposed VAT increase, you know, the ANC supposedly being the People's Party, why would they have suggested a proposed 2% increase against the will of all the other parties and becoming so infamous now that it's exposed?
Well, I think the answer is lying within our tax base. We have a very, very small tax base. I'm going to talk in rough figures, but we have about 7 million personal taxpayers. And only a few 100,000 of these 7 million are paying up to 80% of these taxes. So the tax base is very small. And in order to create a broader tax base, you need value-added tax. And the VAT concept is applicable to a broader context. If they, for example, rise the price or the tax basis for persons and companies, it has reached the point where you can, in fact, get less tax if you higher the tax rate. And it's interesting, I think in 2017, there was a rise in the VAT rate. And Kieswetter is on record saying that at the end of the day, they got less tax than was the case before a higher VAT rate. And the problem is the rest of the tax base is also in a difficult position. And the country is in a financial debt crisis. I think about 22 or 23 cents of every rand that is going to the fiscus is paid on debt, outside debt. And this is becoming more and more unsustainable.
I want to sort of chat briefly about this threat by US to, stop aid to South Africa and the response from President Ramaphosa. Perhaps you can give us some of your views on the matter, Prof.
Well, to start with, I think we have a problem in South Africa with race-based legislation. There's no doubt that there's more than 140 racially based legislation. The majority of them are B-related or equity-related. And we have seen on basis of that high levels of discrimination. In some circles, South Africa is seen as the country where discrimination is on the highest level or among the highest in the world. And this is resembling the practices of what we have seen during apartheid. but just in a reverse way. Now, on basis of that, and specifically the farm murders, and we have seen and know the slogan, kill the boer, kill the farmer, this gained a bit of momentum in the United States. Aid is stopped at least temporary, and this has to do with South Africa's connection to countries like Russia, China, as well as Iran, specifically the nuclear connection with Iran seems to be very problematic. The point I like to make is that the focus on South Africa is not only about the Afrikaner and farm murders. You need to assess that within a more comprehensive context. But the fact of the matter is, we are not dealing well with the situation, and we are going to pay a huge price for that. At the moment, the ANC, according what I can read, is telling me they will go to America and just explain the political landscape, and they will refer to apartheid and affirmative action and all of this, and then everything will be fine. It's not going to be that easy. In the United States of America, all affirmative action, all quota legislations were scrapped a time ago by their Supreme Court. So in that sense, it's going to be problematic. I think we play the game wrong, and we are going to pay a huge price for that.
So how do you see it panning out? Do you think South Africa will give in and start dealing with some of the challenges that President Trump is raising? Because some critics are indicating that he's got an underlying agenda of penalizing South Africa because South Africa have been involved with this ICJ matter and calling Israel to order in a genocide matter, unless that is just a small issue related to the other bigger issues you're raising.
Okay, yes, the ICJ issue is a huge issue for the United States of America and for Trump in particular. I must just say about the other context, the sanctions, it is not necessarily driven by Trump, but it is driven by both the higher house and the lower house in the Congress in the USA. So it's coming from the legislative sector. But back to the Iran International Criminal Court connection, this is definitely on the agenda. And this is also putting on the agenda the rumors that are going around, and some say it is verified that the Iran government did pay South Africa to formulate the case against Israel. And now we are back at that bigger framework I was sketching earlier. But the fact of the matter is the Americans are not going to stop easily on this. They are going to fight back. And what I'm seeing from South Africa, we will send the delegation, but at the same time, Solidarity and AfriForum are already prepared, and they will send their group towards the end of this month. And it is clear that there's a difficult task ahead for the South African government. I have seen a report where Ronald Lamola was complaining that he cannot get access to the American centers of power They do not want to give him an opportunity to talk to them. So at the moment, the relationships are at an all-time low. I believe that South Africa will keep towing the line with the Russians, the Chinese, and Iran. And in that sense, I think political considerations will be for the ANC more important than economic considerations.
Very interesting. We need to carefully monitor the situation and hope that, it settles and, we don't get penalized too heavily with this particular problem. I just want to do one final chat with you, Prof, about the functioning of the GNU. Now, this is a typical case in this budget speech today that, it's broken down to an extent. How do you see this performance of the GNU panning out going forward? Do you think that they will have their differences and continue until the next elections, or do you sort of forecast that there may be a breakdown?
Well, I was asked that question several times, and that is really $1 million question. My assessment until about 2-3 weeks back was that this is a 50-50 scenario, and it's a lot dependent on the leadership coming from Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, at the moment, I think the sustainability of the government of national unity is below 50%. I believe it's highly likely that we may see a problem in this regard. That is why I refer earlier to the scenario where other parties can come together and work in order to create majorities outside of the Democratic Alliance and probably the Freedom Front Plus and maybe a few others. But the fact of the matter is that the government of national unity is just a government of national unity in name. And there's a lot of criticism coming from the support base of the DA that they were captured by the Ramaphosa government. And that capturing is in a number of ways. They are forced to accept legislation like Bella, like expropriation, maybe even national health insurance. They need to implement laws in terms of their executive functions, which they disagree on. We know there's no proper negotiations. So I'm reading a difficult time ahead for the government of national unity. My take on it is that the DA and the ANC as the core partners is still the best case scenario for South Africa. But given the national and international circumstances, I see a difficult road ahead, and it's highly likely that the process may derail on the one or another issue.
It's interesting to note, Prof, on a concluding remark, that John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, mentioned that a lot of the portfolios that they are running in the GNU they were making changes and they can see the results. And he also mentioned something along the lines that I'm saying is that they want to see South Africa prospering. And since the formation of the GNU, the response of the economic markets is indicative of the kind of success of the GNU. Your closing comments on that aspect,
yes. There's no doubt that the governance and the management within the opposition portfolios seems to be better than under the traditional, let's say, ANC portfolios. It's very much like comparing the levels of governance in the Western Cape to that of KZN or Northwest or Free State or whatever the case may be. So I believe that to be the case. But the fact of the matter is that the economy and the financial markets are reacting positive on the government of national unity because they believe that the input of the DA and other parties can change the ANC in the direction of, let's call it, liberalization of policies, less control, more freedom, less social and political engineering. But up until now, this didn't have a big effect. So I think the positive view coming from the economic and financial sectors will probably decline in future. And then we need to look carefully at the international context, which is a changing context, things like the AGOA agreement, investment in South Africa, and specifically what the biggest economy in the world, the United States of America, is going to do. And this may impact the future of the government of national unity and South African politics.
We thank you, Prof, for joining us and sharing with us some very important and interesting observations on not only the GNU, but the threat of US aid to South Africa, as well as the performance of other issues. So we thank you. You keep up the good work, Prof, as you always do, and I'm sure we'll be able to chat with you sometime in not too the distant future. Thank you very much for joining us, and good evening. That was Professor Andre Duvenhage, political analyst from Northwest, always very informative, calls a spade, knowledgeable, gives us a different perspective to issues, and it's something for us to think about, particularly on some of the issues that he raised. My call on the matter, Ismail, Mohammed, is that the government of national unity will continue and may start getting turbulent after the election of a president in the ANC conference that's to come up soon.
It's already turbulent, isn't it?
Yes. What's your take?
I have it on good authority, and I'm not going to mention names or anything else. And I had an informal chat with somebody from the EFF last week sometime, and indications are that the DA is on the verge of pulling out of the GNU, and the EFF is going to step in along with its allies, and it's going to change the political landscape in South Africa again. So we'll have to watch for that. And I mean, the professors brought up some important points regarding, the functionality of the government and the ANC clutching onto power, because if you look at what happened in KZN in the general elections, MK gave them a hell of a knock. But there's also, internal conflict in MK nationally, which the EFF is watching very closely, and they want to actually hone in on that, where they want to get more support, because now what they're doing now specifically is they've got deployees to all the provinces from the central command team, and what's happening, they're rebuilding the zones, preparing for the local government elections coming 2026. So there's lots of things happening in there. But one of the things that you should have touched on with the professor was the role of China in all of this here. Because China is another major economy in the world.
Well, definitely.
And what's it been doing? And it almost outstrips the United States in terms of economy. And it's a very strong player in the international market. So where does that stand? And
China is an important player in South Africa as well.
Absolutely. So where do we stand? Even as BRICS, I mean, how powerful is BRICS to control the United States or to do what they need to do? Because there was talk of a single currency, a BRICS currency.
And that hasn't materialized.
No, it hasn't. But, going back, it makes me think of Gaddafi, the Libyan leader, when he spoke of trading dollars in the dirhams. Trading oil in dirhams, and he wants to do away with the dollar. What happened to him? He was taken out of power. So it was very delicate in terms of that. But South African politics, we need to watch it closely. What happens in Parliament, and also we found that here in the municipality as well, because as allies, ANC making deals, wanting the support. If you go back also historically, where there was a point about 2 years ago where the EFF were adamant to have the former mayor Kaunda removed, and within a month or two, when the motion came in to have Kaunda removed, they did an about turn. So you've got to watch which way, they play the wicket. When it's convenient, okay, we will support the ANC. When they want change in their favor, any political party for that matter, they change their tune. So it's going to happen at national level. It's going to be there.
Well, MK, you mentioned, is an important player in KZN in particular. We need to consider their impact going forward. But we'll take a break for the news, and inshallah we'll continue after the news.
Almost 1 in 5 South African children attend school each day without having eaten breakfast. This seriously affects their ability to concentrate and understand lessons. The Al-Imdad Foundation's Make Breakfast Possible campaign allows learners to enjoy a high-energy cereal at the start of the school day. Help children to focus on learning and not hunger. Let's make breakfast possible today. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Attention shoppers and vendors, the biggest Eid shopping experience is coming to Saxony Westwood Mall from the 20th to the 23rd of March 2025. Get ready for a spectacular shopping spree where all your Eid essentials will be under one roof. Vendor bookings will be opening soon. Stay tuned to secure your spot at Eid Milan 2025.
They convince the world to believe that terrorists look like beards and thobes. Now, as the facade cracks, one martyr after another, the world sees through the broken windows and now knows the true face of terrorism. It wears suits and ties and smiles behind lies.
اللهم احفظ المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الحاقدين اللهم أعد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين اللهم وطهر المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا قوي يا متين.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news, these are the 19th of February. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. Kwatuguza recoups majority of stolen funds, America Monina. Kwatuguza municipality says it has recovered most of the money that was illegally withdrawn from its municipal bank account. It says Absa's Bank's fraud division contacted its municipal officials at the end of last month, alerting them to suspicious transactions in which more than 30 million rands was processed in the municipal banking system. The municipality says the council was informed yesterday that Absa recovered more than 80% of the funds that were withdrawn. However, 2 banks are apparently unwilling to return the remainder of the money. The municipality says it has appointed a lawyer who has filed an urgent application at the High Court to recover the remaining amount. While the Absa's investigation is also ongoing, the municipality had also appointed an external investigator following a council that decided a forensic investigation was needed. Officials are now expecting reports from Kwatuguza's IT departments, the Financial Management System Service Provider, and Absa in due course. More news. Today's budget speech by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has been postponed to the 12th of March. This is the first time since 1994 that a budget speech has been deferred. That's according to local media. The delay comes amid reported disagreements within the Government of National Unity over a proposed 2% VAT increase. It's understood that parties in the National Government of Unity could not agree on the proposed increase. Athol Trollip of the Action SA bemoans the postponement of the budget speech.
Minutes before the budget was supposed to be delivered, the whole country was waiting in anticipation. Parliament had convened. The Speaker called us to tell us, look, Cabinet is divided. They can't agree on the budget. Now, that's completely unprecedented, and it sends shockwaves through the country and the rest of the world. The ANC needs to understand that we do not live in splendid global isolation. The eyes of the world are on us at the moment. Our economy is not growing. There's no investor confidence. We can't attract foreign direct investment, and now this. But you know where it comes from? It comes from an arrogant ANC where they think they can just prepare budgets, bring them to Parliament, stick them under our noses, and we'll vote for them and all will be fine. But it's clear that the House is divided now. There's a new dispensation, and a House divided against itself cannot stand. So the responsibility for this must be laid at the feet of the President and the Minister of Finance. They should have sorted this disagreement out a long time ago, but they're so arrogant. We see the arrogance in the chamber.
Staying with that story, Honorable Swart of the ACDP in Parliament, however, understands the frustrations of both political parties and the public, however, is pleading for calm.
Calm heads, we need level-headedness at this time, given the fact that the executive has decided not to table a budget today, and it could have severe impact on the markets and on the currency, and therefore we need to send a message that we, and those parties that are in agreement with the postponement, that this is in order for the Government of National Unity to obtain consensus on some contentious issues, which could also be linked to the VAT increase. So from our perspective, we would plead for members, for the broader public to understand this is a first budget by this Government of National Unity. Let us enable it to reach consensus, and let us stabilize the markets and sentiments in the nation. That is the least that is required of us as responsible leaders in Parliament.
Your international story, Nail al-Baghouti, the longest-serving Palestinian inmate, is to be released on Saturday after over 4 decades in Israeli prison under the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Baghouti was arrested by Israeli police in 1978 at the age of 19, called his family earlier in the week that he would be released on Saturday under the 7th round of captive prisoner exchange as part of the ceasefire deal. Baghouti, now 67 years of age, has been subjected to worst forms of torture behind bars and suffers from several ailments. That's according to international media. International media further says he was even denied the right to attend his father's funeral in 2004 by the Israeli authorities. Baghouti, now a symbol of Palestinian resistance, was sentenced to 112 years in prison for allegedly killing an Israeli occupation officer north of the occupied Ramallah. Reporters in 2009 it broke the Guinness World Record for the world's longest-serving political prisoner. Financial indicators ran to the dollar 18 rands 57, the euro 19 rands 36, and the British pound is 23 rands 37 cents. Your weather now 26 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. Kwadeguza municipality says it has recovered most of the money that was illegally withdrawn from its municipal bank accounts. That's the
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Africa. Education, health, dignity, empowerment. These wishes all begin with water. Africa Muslims Agency is committed to providing clean water to the thousands who still live without this basic human right. Support us in giving the best of charities. Provide a water well for 16,500 Rand or a borehole for 55,000 Rand in Afghanistan or 65,000 Rand in Africa. Gain Thawabi Jariyah and help communities to reach their full potential. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Need reliable refrigeration for hire? Waterfront has you covered. Choose from a wide range of beverage coolers, island freezers, mobile cold rooms, and commercial ice makers. Perfect for events, businesses, or special occasions. We offer flexible short-term and long-term rentals with convenient on-site delivery. Keep your goods cool and your guests happy with our excellent and professional service. Call us today on 062-842-1705 or email us at info@waterfrontsa.co.za. Waterfront, your trusted partner in refrigeration solutions.
Radio Al Ansar, 24/7, 365.
This all
one child grew and came to be the greatest man alive. Praying Jannah with me, pave the way for us so we can believe. Taught us all about love, showed us what it means. Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, بحنانك قلبي تبسم. Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, so radiant. Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, treat the world to see your face.
يبكيك يا خير الأنبياء، إني مشتاق لأحبابي من بعد.
فما يرضيك يا حبيبي محمد، أنت من صلى عليك وسلم. أمتي أمتي أدخلها معي، أمتي أمتي في الجنة نلتقي. يا محمد يا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا محمد يا محمد بحنانك قلبي تبسم. يا محمد يا محمد so radiant. يا محمد يا محمد treat the world to see your face. يا محمد يا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا محمد يا محمد بحنانك قلبي تبسم. يا محمد يا محمد so radiant. يا محمد يا محمد treat the world to see your face.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Petermarisburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday, Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you informed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Petermarisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were chatting to Councillor Mohammed Ismail, Ward 31, Shahistah Gaffoor from the Asheville Ratepayers Association, and indeed Professor Andre Duvenhage. He shared with us some very important observations in terms of the threat of the US aid to SA, analysis of the performance of GNU, and some of the implications of the budget for 2025 that has been postponed. With me live in the studio, I have Brother Hassan Motala. He's an economist, asset manager, chartered accountant. Hassan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Now, Hassan, you've heard, sort of the reasons for the postponement of the budget speech, predominantly linked to the proposed 2% VAT increase and the disagreement from various political parties on the presentation of the budget. But perhaps there's a little bit more to this budget in relation to its impact on the economic situation. Now, one of the politicians mentioned the fact that the budget has been postponed, and since 1994, this is the first time there could be some impact on the economy. Do you foresee any impact in the economy in view of this postponement, Hassan?
Sure. Look, in terms of the postponement itself, I don't think there'll be a major impact. We have seen today just some movement in terms of the rand weakening, and the stock market reacted slightly negatively to that. But I think when you have GNUs globally, so it's not a South African thing. It's when you look at in Europe, there's many government of mixed coalition governments that take place. There is many disagreements that happens, whether it's but in Germany and those places, you see numerous times where they disagree on budgets or various other proposals. Doesn't mean that something's going to collapse or the country's going to collapse or the economy's collapse. There is a major disagreement, and the major disagreement is obviously around certain tax proposals which were levied, and the main one being obviously the VAT. Now, VAT, remember, we go back to when we started. You go back to 1991, South Africa introduced VAT at that time at 10%. Shortly thereafter, 2 years later, in 1993, it went to 14%. For 25 years after that, it stayed at 14%. So South Africans became accustomed to a certain level of VAT. The only thing that really changed during the period was there was an increase in number of zero-rated items during a period of time. But the rate of VAT of 14% was in place for 25 years, which just gives you an idea. There was stability, and it was well managed, and it was well accepted throughout the country. Also bearing in mind, relative to globally, in terms of either GST, which is general sales tax, or value added tax globally, 14% at that time was deemed to be at your relatively higher levels. Only certain countries like in Europe and those places you will find have closer to 20% sometimes, but majority of the countries, the Middle East and many other places, have closer to 5%. So 14% was relatively high. 2018, because of the impact of the Jacob Zuma era, if you can call it that, where we had a terrible period of time and we were impacted, and which led us to the fiscal situation that we find ourselves in, we were forced to raise VAT from 14 to 15%, which was in 2018. Now, 7 years later, because again, this fiscal situation has not improved substantially, they are looking for a sort of a quick fix. The quick fix is obviously because VAT is the easiest way to accumulate revenue, besides personal income tax. If you look at revenue collections, of the 2.2 billion rand, which is the budget, 800 billion comes from personal income tax, and 545 billion comes from VAT. Which gives you an idea, it's a substantial portion that just comes from those two areas. 800 billion is close to 40% of your revenue comes from personal income tax. What proportion of the population is contributing towards that personal income tax? I can tell you it's less than 15%. Less than 15% of the population contributes 40% of the total revenue generated in this country. VAT, on the other hand, 545 billion, majority of the people in this country pay towards that. So it's a tax that, but the unfortunate thing, it does impact even the most vulnerable people out there. Bear in mind, though, that there is many items that are zero rated, but it does impact still many other items which everybody uses. So it does have an impact on that there. Now, VAT, if they were increasing it by 2%, was potentially going to raise anywhere between 40 to 50 billion rands to the fiscus. And the reason why the fiscus is in the situation it is that our expenditure is still very high. At the same time, we are not growing fast enough. Do you know the last 10 years, we've averaged a growth rate of less than 1%. A country which should be growing substantially faster than that, we've only grown by less than 1% per annum over the past decades. You cannot sustain this type of levels for a longer period because unemployment will continue to rise. We are already at 32% unemployment, and there's more and more younger people that will come into the system. You're going to have more unemployment continuing. So you need to have employment. And the big issue we have, there's two things. We're not creating an environment for companies and individuals to prosper. The amount of bureaucracy that we have, firstly, for small and medium enterprise businesses is ridiculous. There's so much of red tape, whether it's labor unions or whether it's to set up a company, or at least now they've improved in terms of setting up a company. You can do it within, I think, 2 days, you'll set up a company pretty quickly. But the issues around labor unions and labor contracts and those stuff, for a small business that only employs 5 people or 10 people, it's a nightmare to go through some of these issues. And so those are challenges that we have. You have issues around your minimum wages. And remember, we are still a low to middle income country. There's a huge amount of employment. Rather than giving a stipend of 350 Rand a month, which is now become a big expense item in the budget, use other opportunities to rather employ somebody at a slightly lower rate, but that person will take home a lot more than 350 Rand a month and helps to feed a lot more people at home. So those are, I think there's a lot more things. Unfortunately, the ANC through some of its policies has not addressed that. The second issue is the issue around the bloated wage bill. The wage bill currently makes up, it's currently, if I look at the wage bill, compensation of employees in the budget, which is for the public sector, is 820 billion rands. The total budget for expenditure is 2.6 billion. That's 35% of the budgeted expenditure is just towards employee expenses. That's huge. And many of us around this table in the studio, and you can go through any of the municipalities and talk about the service delivery and how efficient public sector employees are in many of the organizations. I think 90% of us, or if not more, will tell us that it's below par. So that is an issue. You're paying phenomenal salaries, very high salaries and the like, but you're not getting value for money. That's an issue. Ratepayers, whether we're paying our income taxes or taxes via our rates and taxes, we expect a certain level of service and delivery. We're not getting that. And but these employees are being paid a huge amount of money for not delivering on that. And that's an issue. And the government does not have the willpower or the political will to cut back on that. Again, because there's alliances with the unions and the like, and it will impact them in terms of voter to voter. And remember, we've got a municipal elections taking place next year. So it impacts. So they don't have the willpower or the political will to cut. He's talking about now, through incentivized retirement, getting 30,000 employees to retire over the next 2 years and then not filling in those positions, which helps as well. But you need to do a lot more than that in terms of cutting the wage bill. They were forced into a corner 2 weeks ago. They had proposed a 3% increase, or 3.5%. Employees were looking at 12%. Where they settled at 5.5%. Somebody has to fund that 2% extra increase for the and VAT was one of the avenues that they were going to use that. Now, the one big situation that we find ourselves as a country is that our debt level is unsustainably high. We are now 75% of GDP is our debt level. To put it into a perspective which everyone can understand, for every rand of revenue that the country is generating through the taxes or whatever it may be, 22 cents is going towards paying interest. Debt service, 22 cents. So 22% of the money is just going to service the debt costs. When you can think about how much of that can be used towards other, whether it's infrastructure, healthcare, police, whatever those are, 22 cents is just going towards debt servicing costs. So you cannot take on more debt. So either you cut expenditure or you raise taxes. They went the route, or this proposed budget, which didn't end up happening, was to raise taxes. And you can see there was obviously pushback from the GNU partners. So I think it's going to be the next, 2 weeks. I think they're talking about the 12th of, just under 3 weeks, the 12th of March is going to be the expected budget is now expected to be on the 12th of March. Within that period, there's definitely going to be a lot of discussions and there will be negotiations. And there will be some form of settlements within the GNU partners. Whether there will be a 2%, I don't think so. Maybe they'll settle on 1% increase on VAT, but look at other aspects where they can maybe cut either costs or maybe introduce some other forms of revenue generation and the like. But it's going to be definitely negotiations, tough negotiations over the next few weeks. But the key that we need is we need better revenue, better GDP growth. And we have to create, our infrastructure is becoming dire straits in many parts of the country. Johannesburg, which is supposed to be our economic powerhouse, the infrastructure there, everything eThekwini, and we complain, and many people complain about eThekwini. We actually, relatively speaking, relative to other parts of the country, we're still not as bad. Joburg's terrible. Joburg hasn't had water. Many places hasn't water now for 2 weeks or more, and there's no end in sight as to what's Rand Water's talking. There's going to be dire straits, coming up if there's no resolving of certain of the issues. Potholes everywhere and the likes, and this is supposed to be your economic powerhouse. So there are challenges around infrastructure. There are challenges around, service delivery and the like. We need to get those things. Those, especially service infrastructure and service delivery, you get them sorted out, it help. We can see what happened in terms of Eskom. The fact that you've had over 300 days or so of no load shedding and reasonable amount of stable electricity. You're going to have your outages and the like, but we've had reasonably stable electricity for a period of time. It helps businesses. It really helps. The small and medium enterprises are doing better. The retailers are doing better. It creates that. If we see that happening on the infrastructure, if we see that happening in terms of road, rail, and port transport and logistics and the like, we'll create but cut the bureaucracy, reduce the red tape, and gets improvement in service delivery, you will see our GDP growth getting back to the 2%, 3%, 4% levels, which we saw in the Thabo Mbeki era. Thabo Mbeki's era was basically one of the best eras we've had post-democracy. And you had a period of 3 to 4% economic growth for a period of 7 to 8 years, which saw the country flourishing during that period. We need to get back to that. And hopefully, inshallah, we'll see that.
Some very interesting comments. Basically, I want to bring you in, Councillor Mohammed. I think Hassan mentioned there's a bloated bureaucracy, and indeed in eThekwini that's a major problem, exacerbated by corruption, maladministration, and fraud, which hasn't been sorted out yet, and monies are being squandered. And countrywide, it's being squandered. And, in the Zuma era, he still says, what wrong have I done? So the impact of all this, with the Zondo Commission recommendations still outstanding, most municipalities are close to facing administration, including eThekwini. Now, until and unless that bureaucracy don't get their act together, you're going to have this gradual decline, or as one critic said, a serious decline in service delivery. I think you wanted to briefly talk about water, which is a fundamental, essential in everybody's life. And
absolutely,
they were talking about the curtailment program. It came on and went off, and now they're talking about installing tricklers in the, what you call piping.
Main
Perhaps you just
pipelines.
want to quickly comment on that.
But
We've got another 10 minutes to wrap up.
just ahead of that, right? The thing is that President Ramaphosa has initiated the Special Investigation Unit to look into the water departments and everything else in terms of maladministration.
That's a recent recommendation.
It just happened now, yes.
In eThekwini.
In eThekwini,
yes.
But now what's happening, the new proposal that has come from the Executive Committee in the municipality yesterday, they're introducing restrictors, water restrictors. So what's going to happen, they're going to be put into the main pipe system.
So there'll be low pressure.
So you'll have low pressure. But it's going to go to 550,000 households. Now that's going to exacerbate problems again, because people are going to say, listen, why are you reducing water? Why are you doing that? As it is, water is, I forget.
Put all the outages, etc.
Yeah, the outages and whatever. And reservoirs are running low because the supply is restricted from getting water and all of that. So there's issues that exacerbate everything. And, I foresee that, in certain areas, you've got Phoenix, Ntuzuma, Verulam, Tonga that still have issues that's not going away anytime soon. And I mean, the show is a little
The
bit short.
infrastructure is badly affected
But
also.
I've got questions and answers here that we presented to council, which we asked them what's going on, and the problems just pile up and pile up and pile up because administration is an issue and everything else is an issue. But just briefly to give you, very briefly, we presented questions in 2023, and then again a follow-up set of questions in 2024 August, where we're asking how many burst pipes, for example, in Ward 31 there was for that period. There were 248 burst pipes. And this goes to weak infrastructure, where we have the old clay
Just
pipes.
one ward, so many.
The one ward. Ward 25, 211. Ward 27, 241 bursts.
And it's all as a result of poor infrastructure?
Poor infrastructure,
poor
absolutely.
Maintenance
Poor
as well.
maintenance and a whole lot of things, because then we've asked them about studies, and I mean, this whole thing goes on and on and on. We can spend a whole hour speaking about it. Estimated loss of water, the cost, and this is non-revenue, 1.9 million for that period. 1.9 million is shocking, where, the infrastructure...
And we understand more than 50% of water is lost through underground water leaks because of poor infrastructure.
And you've got pressure reduction valves which cannot handle or sustain
And many
pressure.
years ago, the city promised they're going to look at all these underground water leaks, and nothing's being done.
Nothing's been done. For Ward 31, there was a special survey and testing that done, because we asked them to do that and give us a report back, and there's drawings in place, and they'll never replace all the pipes or anything. So we're going to have the Band-Aid fixing every single time. And water is a basic human right. We're paying for it. We're paying for the reticulation of water and everything, and everybody wants a water supply. You don't want water outages at 8 o'clock in the evening and coming and water being restored at 4:30 in the morning. You don't want that, because why must the ratepayers suffer at the inadequacy of those in power in the department and everything else? Because a city manager in November had a workshop telling us as councillors that they redesigning the departments for better efficiency, where things can get done faster.
It's taking far too long.
But the city itself is dogged by strikes. And every now and again, there's protests outside City Hall, whichever department it comes from, whether it's EPWP people, whether it's electricity department, whether it's DSW, whether it's bus drivers or whatever it is, the city is dogged by those problems.
So, we are not hiding to nothing. There's promises being made and nothing being done. As Hassan pointed out, there's no value for money in the rates that one pay. And we're saying this week in and week out. And the only solution is to really relook. I mean, Hassan mentioned there's 200,000 senior employees, they wanting to put them on pension and not replace them. But the problem is those are the experienced personnel. And if you don't replace them, you have staff that can't perform.
You have to have that follow-through.
Your service delivery declines drastically. Shahistah, you have any closing comments to make on your side? What is still troubling your ward, and is it really frustrating to the residents?
Well, we also have our time-to-time water outages, in the sense that the WDO will tell you, okay, no, the reservoir's low. Control will tell you another story. There's a burst pipe there that's causing this. You actually don't know. There's no transparency as to what is happening. So if you speak to 10 people, you're going to get 10 different versions of what is happening.
Do you believe they don't know what's happening internally?
I 100% believe that they don't know what is happening.
From the head of the department downwards?
Downwards.
So it's a blind leading the blind.
Yes, they don't speak to each another. They don't relay messages. So how are you going to fix something if nobody knows what is happening?
For example, if you phone the call center, who calls the manager of the section, who calls the head, all of them are in the same page. They don't know what's happening.
Nothing.
They're inexperienced. They're just there to come in the morning, as Mayor Kaunda said, sign in and they disappear for the day and come back. Yep. Maybe 10% of the staff are really working. Now, to continue with that bureaucracy is a major problem, Mohammed. Are they really looking at I recall when I was there and I retired in 2017, and for about 5 years or 10 years, there was performance-based management contracts. And every year in your anniversary date, there should be an assessment on your deliverables. And we used to fill in documents where we record what our outputs are going to be based on performance, and your bonus is based on that.
The KPIs.
And, Now, obviously, that would give an indication to every individual, from the general worker right to the city manager, what is expected of them for the year. I'm not sure whether that now is taking place or it's being jippoed.
It's there, but they're working at their own level, doing their own thing, and there's a breakdown in communication between the departments also, and we've witnessed that. And like Shahistah was mentioning earlier, you have a major burst, they come and fix it. right? So when they come and fix it, the spoils are on the side of the road, and the spoils will lay there for sometimes even a month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
And those
also.
other departments don't come and repair safe. And those things
doesn't-
get worse.
And they get worse. You know how bad things are in terms of logistics. I'll tell you, and it's here in black and white. One of the questions we asked them, TLBs, when it's needed to come and dig out, when there's a burst pipe, 21. There's supposed to be 21. 17 at this point of time in August 2024, when we presented these questions, 17 were in the workshop out of 21.
So only 4 are working.
And that's it. If you go to the maintenance yard, and you'll see the number of vehicles that are in for repairs, and they're struggling with parts. So logistically, there's another problem. Tires, the supposed to be stocked up. There isn't enough, and there has been word of items being stolen, and this is by municipal employees, stolen and resold. I mean, infrastructure is being damaged by employees that say reservoirs, valves that have been stolen. Unfortunately, it's not being curbed. Unfortunately, and there was once a shortage of.
Isn't the mayor and his exco?
No, they are looking at
responding to issues.
They are
doing something about it, being accountable.
There is now a investigation. There's a synergy, a working relationship with SEPs to deal with these issues, and there are investigations.
SEPs also corrupt, and they on the take as well.
Let's not get there, right?
So, a major problem, countrywide, provincial, national, and indeed local government. We talk about it every week. Nothing's being done. It's getting progressively worse.
We're in trouble in South Africa.
Ratepayers are frustrated. Now with this 2% proposed hike, 40 billion, they're going to have to find if they're not going to go with the hike, because politically it won't be accepted, because the opposition parties are saying no. And they're referring to the ANC government's, maladministration, etc. Interesting times ahead. Hassan, your closing comments.
Sure. I think it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of hectic negotiations, if I can call it that, over the next 3 weeks. Hopefully there'll be a more sensible budget that will come out, a lot more focused on growth rather than, driving tax hikes. And remember, the population has had a tough period over the last couple of years, and to bear again increasing taxes and the like just places more burdens and more strains on an already overburdened and overtaxed population. So I think you need to the focus should rather be focusing on how can you drive GDP growth, how can you improve service delivery, improve infrastructure, and those once you're creating more GDP growth and the like, automatically more revenues are generated. There's more in the coffers for the tax coffers, and there's more that can be done in terms of spending. You cannot just keep on squeezing that same lemon all the time and expecting it to give you more juice. Inevitably, it's going to dry out. And I think there is pushback, not necessarily just from the DA. You speak to, you saw some of the comments where ordinary people were being spoken to after, and when they heard why it was postponed, majority of the people out there of the view that they don't want further tax hikes. They're tired, and it's very little is getting into their back pockets these days, and it's impacting them. So I think the ANC needs to be, they've become very numb to the people's concerns and issues. And they need to start, addressing the concerns and issues, and working with their partners in providing a more growth-focused budget come 3 weeks' time.
Shukran, Hassan. One listener just got a question for you, Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum. Can somebody please help me? Can I get in touch with somebody senior in the municipality, as all the phone numbers do not work? Yeah. And I know this is a common problem, because
we're just going to laugh at that comment.
Queries, the phone is not answered, and when eventually it's answered, they move it from one to the other, and when you go there, there's such big queues. So over and above poor service delivery or no service delivery, the phones are not working, and then people cannot. From your point of view, I know, you, Shahistah, and yourself, you'll give people details of the fault lines for water, electricity, and how to phone. And because you all have been contacting them, you get some kind of a response. Is there any number that our tenants and listeners and ratepayers can...
What is that problem specifically for?
This is a general query that's come through, and I think it's applicable in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely. There are numbers, I don't have it at hand
I
right
think
here.
it's the 08.
But if you
Can they find it in any website?
Yeah, it's on the website on durban.gov.za.
It'll be 0803111111.
Can you repeat that, Shahistah, so that our listeners can then try that number? Do they answer that number?
They do. Sometimes the network is congested. Just keep trying. 080-311-1111.
So, to our listeners out there, dial that number and, hope for the best.
Water and electricity.
Water and
get through.
electricity queries.
And accounts.
Billing queries as well, or is it another?
Yep, you can get them.
You can do that. Just to add to what Shahistah is saying, you can add. You go to the website durban.gov.za. They've got all the numbers there. You can report faults online and everything else. It goes through. And the other thing also, what you can do or you should do, is download the municipal app, and you report the faults, and you almost immediately get your reference numbers and everything back. And there's a window there that says view complaints. And you can see whether it was closed or it remains open or in progress. So use those online facilities that will benefit you.
On the app as well, you can, if you register, you'll get your municipal bill as well. You can upload your electricity readings as well onto that app. So it's actually quite handy.
Now, in terms of the rates rebate, for those that are property owners and the value is below, what's the threshold? 1.1 million?
It's about that.
They must fill in that rebates form on or before 31st March, or is it
30th April?
30th April.
Yeah, I think 30th
April.
So there is 2 forms. Just make sure you fill out the correct
and
one.
attest it as well.
Yeah, there's a rates rebate renewal. So if you're eligible, they normally email that to you, and you've applied previously, so you get a continuation. If it's your first time, there's another form where it's a rebate application form. So just make sure that.
So if it's your renewal, you fill in that
yeah.
form, you have it attested, and you submit your ID with that to be safe.
And it goes through.
Yeah.
And email it to the correct address, and they must acknowledge receipt.
The address is on the form at the top there.
Okay, so a lot of people, I think, have been querying that as well. In terms,
just one point, and also Shahistah brought this to my attention. The old forms were going around 2024,
25, yeah.
And the deadline was April 2024. So people must not please use that.
They must use the new forms.
We have the new ones. I think Shahistah does have the new ones also, and
it's also on the website as well.
Not yet. It's not
yet
uploaded. The old ones on the municipal
website. So those
website.
that had rates rebates previously, they're receiving it by email.
Via email, correct.
Okay,
just look for the new
emails
dates.
and make sure you fill in the form and submit it before the 30th of April. In terms of your SASA grants, I think you're going to go to the various places to change that card. Have they extended the deadline date for that from 28 Feb to somewhere in March, or is it still 28 Feb?
It's 20th March. It's extended.
28th March.
Yeah.
So you can go to any one of the ShopRite stores.
ShopRite or Boxer. So there's a number that you dial. I don't have it with me, but
Is it all the
tells you.
ShopRite stores?
No. They'll give you a list of the certain stores. So the nearest one to us would be West Street ShopRite.
So the other ShopRites cannot do it?
And then there's Mount Edgecombe, and there's Pinetown, and there's quite a few in the townships that
I know the Ward 25
They had
residents had a one-day
they had a lovely
session
system
at
going.
David Lando. Can't that be arranged for other wards?
I mean, it was nearby. We went there. It was a 5-minute process. I took my mom. 5-minute process.
So can't we have another one for our residents of these wards around this area? Because in town it's quite dangerous. Number one, to find parking. Number two, to get to this ShopRite store in town. Because there's so many ShopRite in other areas. So what we'll do is before what date is it? 18th of March?
20th of
20th of March, we'll try to check whether our ratepayer associations can organize a similar one that David Landau had, so that if it's a one-day affair, then those that missed out, they can come elsewhere. The Boxer stores are all over the place, you say? Yeah?
There's limited.
also-
You got to look at the list.
And also
It's in
post
certain
offices
areas.
as well.
There's not in KZN. It's not on the list of any of the post offices that are doing it.
But many of the post offices are also non-functional.
Yeah.
Because if you've got residents living all over Durban, and for them to come to Durban and then find big queues, there is a major
It's
problem.
ridiculous. You're having 270, 300 people in a line.
So can we request, your Ward 31 to see whether they can arrange something similar in one of the halls, and I don't
My
mind
assistant.
making our I don't mind making our hall available at 189 West Road, which is bigger than David Land, or to provide this opportunity. Maybe Shahistah, you can look at that and then
We can
Councillor
work on
Mohammed.
that. Yes, absolutely.
And then advise me which day, and I will make that hall available for that particular function and make it convenient for our ratepayers and also grantees and pensioners of this particular area. But we will keep you informed of that.
Absolutely.
On that note, that brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. I thank our guests for joining me and sharing some very important information. To my technician, Monli, thanks very much. And to you, the listener. And the bottom line is that as Muslims, we are approaching the Mubarak month of Ramadan in about 10 days' time. And we have to make fervent du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides our leaders towards improving service delivery, improving the performance of government. And, we have the most important weapon in turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to make certain amals for du'as to be accepted, because the conditions that prevail is as a result directly of the amals that our ummah carries out. So it is imperative that, we into the Mubarak month of Shaban, and in 9 days' time, we'll get into the Mubarak month of Ramadan. And these are auspicious days and months. Let's make du'as. Let's keep up with our 5 times salah, wa zikrullah, wa tilawatul Quran, and make du'as for the ummah at large, because there's a lot of challenges and difficulties going in. And, materialism influences people's lives worldwide. And, all we need is to serve humanity and ensure that we take care of people, because this was a great sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. So we should continue with this humanitarian work, especially those people are facing considerable hardship. We have to ensure that we care for them. And as I mentioned, with this pouring rain, a lot of residents of the informal settlements, they dread this rainfall, yet we regard it as a great ni'mat of Allah, because they find it difficulty staying in their premises, and even when they come out, they slip into the pathways, etc., and many of them get injured. And what about all the health challenges? So we make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on the ummah, and those that are involved in humanitarian work should continue with the good work, and at the same time make du'as for the ummah, so that our livelihoods in the country is improved. On that note, until next Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.